Rural Americans deserve access to the best of what our country has to offer, especially health care. Across every state, every community, America's rural hospitals are the first line of defense, protecting our families, neighbors, and loved ones. No matter where you live, hospital care doesn't clock out. They're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Each year, America's over 5,000 hospitals care for millions of patients, providing 24/7 emergency care, delivering babies, cancer treatments, and other life-saving care that patients rely on. Behind every one of those patients are doctors, nurses, and caregivers working tirelessly to keep people healthy and safe. Hospitals are our community's lifelines. They employ our neighbors and keep our families healthy. But now, some in Congress are threatening access to care. Tell Congress, protect patient care to keep America strong. Don't cut rural health care.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. Thank you so much for joining on this first weekend of March, and I'm appreciative of listeners all over the country. We have stations in California, we have stations in Kansas City, St. Louis, we've got stations in Chicago, we've got stations that go all the way up to Maine and all the way down to Georgia. So thank you so much for joining the show, and we will be taking your calls later. But right now I wanted to tell you about one of the things that's going on that is problematic, and that is all of these blue states, not all of them, but many of them are raising taxes. And I live in Virginia, and in Virginia, the new governor there wants to tax everything from dog walkers to dog groomers to people who use Uber Eats, and everything that's delivered is going to have a big surtax on you. They're going to raise the income tax, et cetera, et cetera. And then you've got what's going on in New York with the Mayor Mandami, who's saying he's going to have to raise taxes on everybody if they don't raise taxes on the top 1%. And then you've got a big initiative in California, the bluest of blue states, to have a wealth tax on millionaires and billionaires. And the millionaires and billionaires are flooding out of that state now. And now you also have a situation in Washington state, which is one of the 9 states that does not have an income tax, along with states like Texas, Florida, Nevada, New Hampshire, Tennessee, South Dakota, and a few others. And Washington state has always been a fairly rich state. It was the home of Amazon. It was the home of Starbucks. It was the home of Microsoft, in part because they had no income tax. And now they're getting perilously close to having an income tax there because they want to, make the system fair. And that means everyone will be poorer. And now the person who knows more about this subject, by the way, than probably anybody on the planet is my long-term friend and mentor, Richard Vedder. You know Richard Vedder. He's a very famous economist from Ohio University, has written on these issues for decades. And so, Rich Vedder, thanks so much for joining.
Glad to be with you, Steve.
So, Rich, you know this as well as anyone. In fact, I think you wrote the very first study back in the late 70s or early 80s on how the states without an income tax were dramatically outperforming the states with high income taxes, the states like, New Jersey and California, and at that time, New York obviously had high taxes. And I think you even said at one point it was like about 1,000 people every day were leaving the high tax states for the low tax states. It's probably even more than that now.
Yeah, I think the numbers are greater. Depends on exactly how you define high tax or low tax, etc. But the numbers are greater. It's amazing that California, which joined the Union around 1850 and has just been the growth engine of the country population-wise ever since, in the 1980s it added 6 million people. You know how much what's happened to the population of California from 2020 to 2025? It fell. The population of California fell. And it's not that just because the Californians it's not because they don't make good lovers or something like that. It's not because of although that may be true too, but that one I'll stay away from. It's just because high taxes and other things too, how the taxes get spent is often a negative factor, but this is what has happened. It doesn't take rocket science to see the population of Texas is booming. The population of Florida is booming. You don't have to be very smart to see that.
Yeah. And yet they're pretty stupid because they don't see it. And so Washington State was one of those 9 states that you measured as a state that was a fast growing state. And they are probably going to put in an inheritance tax, an income tax, a departure tax. And you know what? The rate would be as high as 9.5%. That would put them in maybe the top 10 in the highest tax. So they would go, Rich, from having one of the lowest income taxes in the country to one of the highest. That's not going to work out too well for them, is it?
No, it's going to be awful. They're going to have a mass out migration from places like Seattle to and by the way, in the state of Washington, there's a little, and this is true somewhat in Oregon, there is a sort of an intra-state rebellion going on, I think, and I don't know how strong it is. The people in the western part of Washington, who are relatively sane people, and more like the people, say, in Idaho or Utah and other states like that, fairly conservative people, hardworking people, they don't want income taxes. They don't want any of this. It's the people in the Seattle area that are pushing it, and it's going to destroy the state of Washington.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have a website that we started on Unleash Prosperity called votewithyourfeet.com. I think a lot of our listeners are familiar with that. Go to votewithyourfeet.com and you can look at the most recent data from the IRS, from the Census Bureau about who's moving where. And the pattern is very clear here, Rich. And it's something you pioneered all the research on this, that the moving vans and the capital and all the money is leaving those high tax states, and it's going to places, as you said, like Texas and Florida and Idaho and Tennessee, et cetera. There's a little, we had a little cartoon in our hotline a couple weeks ago that had, one of those signs when you drive into a state and it said, welcome to Florida. We have no vacancies here because so many people are moving in. And so, why don't they get it? I mean, when I once debated Paul Krugman, the famous left-wing economist, on this, and I showed him the data that you put forward about all these people moving to these southern states and moving to low tax states. And they said, he said, the reason they're doing that is because of the weather. They're moving to Florida because of the weather. Oh, yeah. And I said, well, gee, if that's the case, why are all these people moving from California? Because, Rich, nobody moves out of California to get better weather.
No, exactly. In fact, a state that's even worse than California in some ways is Hawaii. It's such a small state, we don't talk about it much. There's only 1 million people living there. The population of people are moving out of Hawaii. If there's anything that resembles paradise in weather, it's Hawaii. You can't beat Hawaii. And it has never snowed a day in Hawaii. It's nice all the time. And yet people are leaving Hawaii, of all places. But they're moving into the Dakotas. Now, no one ever claimed that the Dakotas were a climate paradise. I mean, this is just sheer nonsense, this weather argument.
It is. And by the way, you can't get a moving van and United Van Line moving van to move out of Hawaii. You gotta get on an airplane to move out of Hawaii.
Yeah. Although speaking of moving van, you mentioned this earlier. I have a lot of fun every now and then. I go on to a website. I look at U-Haul, I guess. And I look at the price of renting a U-Haul in, say, New York City and moving to Austin, Texas. And then I look at the same trip the other way, the reverse direction from Austin to New York, and the cost of renting the U-Hauls are dramatically different. Why? Is because there are absolutely no U-Hauls available in New York City because no one is moving there. No one in their right mind is moving from Texas to New York, yet they're tons of U-Hauls in Austin because everyone's moving to Texas. So you can rent a U-Haul for a nickel. It's more than that, obviously.
They want you to drive it back. They'll pay you to drive it back too.
Yeah, that's right. They actually do. Occasionally, they pay drivers to get them to get those. Yeah. So this is crazy. It's just crazy.
Yeah. So, Rich, we've got to take a quick break. Can you hold on for a few minutes? I'd love to, because I want to talk to you about this war against Walmart and the big box retailers. You've done a big study on this, and I want people to be aware of it. Folks, we got to take a hard break now. This is the More Money Show. I'm economist Steve Moore. Don't forget to go to the hotline, that we put out every morning, which is free. Go to Unleash Prosperity now, unleashprosperity.com, and we will send it to you for free. My guest is Richard Vedder, the famous, eminent economist who knows more about where people are moving to and from than anybody in the country, and we'll be right back. We are back, folks. This is the More Money Show. I hope you're having a wonderful weekend, the first full weekend of March of 2026. I'm talking to a friend and colleague and mentor, Richard Vedder. He is a famous economist at Ohio University, has been writing about the economy for 4 decades or more. And so, Rich, thanks again for joining. We were talking earlier with Richard Vedder about why are all the people moving from out of New York and California and Connecticut and these other states. And by the way, I want to just, before I leave that subject, I want to mention that my good friend Betsy McCoy is a good friend. She's an incredible force of nature. She's good on the economy. She's very good on healthcare issues, et cetera. She is trying to save Connecticut. She's trying to save Connecticut by repealing the income tax that was put into effect by Lowell Weicker back in, I think it was around 1991, 1992. And ever since that income tax came in, Richard Vedder, Connecticut keeps sinking like they're in quicksand.
Absolutely. Connecticut has become a basket case, and it's such a shame because, as you say, there was a time in the era of income taxes when Connecticut didn't have one in, say, the 1950s or 60s, and Connecticut was booming. So,
and look at them now.
There you have it.
And so, by the way, Rich, same thing with New Jersey. New Jersey didn't have an income tax, I think, till the mid-60s.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And they were one of the richest places on the planet. Sure.
It's time everywhere you go. It's true. Since we're in that part of the United States, take New Hampshire and Vermont. There are 2 states in the Union that are more similar, topography-wise, weather-wise. Right. Those 2 states are happy. You look at the growth rates of those states over the last half century. The population of New Hampshire has consistently risen. Vermont, much less so, or even declined. Vermont, of course, is the state of Bernie Sanders and ultra woke lefty policies, high taxes, and so forth. New Hampshire has no income tax, has no sales tax either. The only state in the union, by the way, that's true.
Yeah.
And New Hampshire's beaten the pants off of Vermont by any economic indicator.
It's just so obvious. It's just so frustrating to me that people in New York City would vote for someone who was going to raise the taxes, or California would have this wealth tax. And as you just said, wealthy people just move away, and then they'll get less money. I mean, the top 1%, the top 2% in income in California and the top 2% of income in New York pay half the taxes. So if they leave, who's going to pay the taxes in these places? It seems pretty obvious to me, folks. Soak the rich never works. So I wanted to change directions in our last few minutes, Rich, and talk about this issue that you and I have written about. We were in the New York Post on this on Friday, yesterday, that there's something called the Robinson-Patman Act. It is an antitrust law that goes back to the 1930s. It was sort of part of the New Deal. By the way, one of the greatest myths of all time is that the New Deal was a success. It was not a success. It was a failure. But most antitrust laws, anti-monopoly laws, are intended to try to make sure that powerful companies don't raise prices on consumers, right? And yet, in this case, the Robinson-Patman Act is suing companies like Walmart for lowering prices. I mean, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of, Rich.
It is, and it was put in special interest legislation that was put in the 1930s. Now, the 1930s was a period of spectacularly bad legislation. The New Deal was a failure. We had 10 years of double-digit unemployment. Never had that before in history, nor since. All kinds of mistakes were made during that period, but one of which was Robinson-Patman in 1936. And I live, Steve, in a small town in Appalachian, Ohio, on the edge in Appalachia, high poverty rate and so forth. The biggest thing that has been raised the quality of life in my town, and since I've been here 60 years, has been when Walmart came to town. Because Walmart brought lower prices, more goods you couldn't find anywhere before, and you could drive to this store with a big parking lot and go in there, clean, and buy, if you want to buy a soda or you want to buy whatever you want to buy. And it would be 10-20% cheaper often, or more, than in the other stores in town. And so it was a liberating moment for our community. It was like, free at last. We're now joining the big time. We're getting the same kind of opportunities that the big cities have. Because Sam Walton recognized that there was an opportunity to serve these kind of communities. Right. And yet, Robinson-Patman is an example of a law. In fact, it is the example of a law that is aiming to negate that, to prevent that from happening. Right.
It's the craziest thing, and you can't make this stuff up. I just want to reiterate here that the under Biden in his last days in office, his idiot Federal Trade Commission had Lena Khan, who believes that every company that makes a profit in America is a monopoly. And this law basically says you cannot cut prices. And that makes no sense, right? That makes no sense. We want companies to cut prices. We want things more affordable. And Rich, the reason they say you can't, like a Walmart or a Costco or an Amazon can't, quote, cut prices, which obviously is a benefit to consumers, is it's anti-competitive. What does that mean?
Yeah, it's crazy. When this was put in the 30s, and in the 30s, we started to get, for the first time in the nation's history, grocery stores that, in large numbers, 500, 1,000 stores and so forth. Mm-hmm. The biggest at the time was something called A&P. I remember. And, like we have many grocery chains today. And it was competing with these mom and pop little stores on the corner. You walk in and you could buy a very limited amount of goods there, and you had to pay pretty high prices. And so the A&P came in, and some other chains, later on Safeway in California and so on, and Walmart, and to lower prices, offer lower prices, and the old retailers who fought it. They hired lobbyists, no doubt. I don't remember the precise details to keep this from happening. So it was special interest legislation designed to aid a small number of businesses at the expense of the American public, period.
That's right. And it's, one of my favorite economists is Joseph Schumpeter, who talked about creative destruction. That's what Walmart and Costco and these discounters do. They bring in the new generation. It's just so infuriating here. And by the way, we've got about a minute and a half left. You wrote an amazing book back a number of years ago about Walmart. And I think I remember you said something in the book like there's no anti-poverty program ever invented by government that has done more to lift the incomes and the purchasing power of low-income people more than Walmart.
Yeah, no, Sam Walton should be put on a $5 bill or a $10 bill or something. He sure as hell done more for our nation and its people than some other names. We should build a statue for Sam Walton somewhere.
Yeah. And by the way, we now have some of these companies that are even giving lower prices than Walmart. I mean, it's a wonderful thing, competition.
Yeah, well, that's right. Walmart. Now, Amazon came along and now last year passed Walmart in sales. Well, they're both bargain basements compared with some of the old forms of retailing, and they've opened opportunities for American consumers that didn't exist.
So I think the bottom line here is we want to get rid of these lawsuits against companies that are cutting prices. That makes no sense to me. I don't think it makes sense to any of us, but it's a real clear and present danger. Folks, thanks for listening to the first hour of the More Money Show. For many of these stations, we'll be back in the next hour, so please stay with us. This is the More Money Show.
Listen to this podcast now on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Leadership Thread with Dr. Peggy Polonis.
I'm Dr. Peggy Polonis. Join me on each episode where I unravel the story that shaped leaders, tracing the thread that led them where they are today. Because leadership isn't born in adulthood. And thank you once again for joining us on the Leadership Thread, education, ethics, and sustainability.
Download all of Red Apple Media's podcasts right now through your favorite podcast platform.